Item 18, for possible action, discussion and deliberation to A, accept a funding agreement with Nye Communities Coalition to provide funding for a case manager, caseworker, and services to the community through the FASTT program for calendar year 2025 in the amount of $94,854. No county match required. B, execute the funding agreement, and C, fund to 10283 Health and Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have a few questions. Is this whoever is presenting this COSUP? Are you familiar with COSUP? COSSUP?
Corinne Smith, SMITH, Director of Health and Human Services. I know COSEP was part of the funding that Nye Communities Coalition was receiving in order. It's a few different funding sources that are helping to fund this program.
This is the same program as the COSUP program? Goes to 12/21/25, by the way.
I'm going to have DJ Mills from the coalition come up because he is actually the program manager and runs the program. So.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's been a while.
DJ Mills, MILLS. So the question at hand there is COSEP funding. Are they funding the exact same project?
No, is this a concurrent program as to the one you're requesting from us?
It is a different funding source that helps contribute to the efforts of the deflection program, part of the FAST and part of the MOST program. It's more regional,
okay.
But yes, part of it is for Nye County, and that's why the requests are percentage-based.
Can you tell us what COSUP stands for, please?
I really wish you wouldn't put me on the spot.
I can tell you. Can you confirm or deny it?
Yeah.
Comprehensive Opioid Stimulant and Substance Use Program.
Yes, that does sound very accurate.
Okay. And that program has your deflection as part of it, at least according to what I'm looking at here. And I have all the things I'm reading from Janie in my office here has down there. It's a big packet. I'm not reading from all of it because I don't want to be here longer than we need to, but everything I have here is in that packet in case you want to see it. One of the goals of this is to prevent unnecessary entry into criminal justice system. I guess just a quick question on it, since this is something that you are an expert in. Who is deciding about whether or not this is necessary and it's an entry into the criminal justice system under your program?
Law enforcement.
Okay, so you don't make that decision. Okay.
No.
And then the three allowable uses for COSUP are: one, maybe you can confirm or deny this, law enforcement and other first responder diversion programs; two, naloxone, which is some kind of, can you explain what that is?
Naloxone is a nasal spray that reverses the effects of an opioid overdose so that they can get medical care as needed.
And then the third is identifiable and accessible take-back programs from unused controlled substances found in the home used by hospitals long-term care. So you had said that law enforcement makes that decision. So law enforcement and other first responder diversion programs, so you're asking law enforcement to divert criminals away from law enforcement into your care. Is that what you're saying? You're asking law enforcement to divert criminals away from law enforcement into your care. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm saying that law enforcement often interacts with individuals who have needs that don't rise to a level of incarceration, where they would prefer to connect that individual with social services or appropriate programming, as opposed to arresting them. And sometimes with limited resources, they're forced to take action that they would rather not. We simply provide an alternative, and that is completely at the discretion of the law enforcement partners.
You were in a podcast on July 26, 2024. Do you remember that podcast?
Yeah.
That was you that was in that?
I was part of it.
I have a transcript
with a few others.
It says to keep people from unnecessarily entering the criminal justice system, often done with a co-responder model of law enforcement. What is a co-responder model of law enforcement?
Yeah, sure. A co-responder model is where a clinician and a specially trained behavioral health peace officer will both respond together, usually in a singular vehicle, to provide appropriate services for the individual who made the call or was the subject of the call.
And would they be in the car with the law enforcement officer or somewhere else?
Across the state, this is done effectively as a co-responder model, and it's not yet applicable here in Nye County, but it is a goal. But yes,
It is a goal here.
yes, they would go in a car that is generally across the state operated through the sheriff's office.
Do you have any, I've talked to some sheriff deputies, I talked to some of them. Are there any of them telling you that they want a social worker in their car with them?
Yes, I have had conversations with deputies that we've gone to conferences together, or we've discussed needs of the clientele that they serve, and they see a benefit to it.
So this is part of the deflection program, is that correct?
Yes.
Have you heard of Police Chief Magazine?
I mean, I can't speak to it, but yes, I've heard of it.
So in Police Chief Magazine, it says, and maybe they're wrong here, in deflection, law enforcement officers are not the lead problem solvers in the situations they encounter. You had said that they are the lead problem solvers. We have a discrepancy here. Who's right?
I think problem solver could be open to interpretation in that.
Okay.
I would say that discretion of whether there would be an arrest would be at the hands of the law enforcement partner.
It says officers will need to engage and rely on healthcare and human services. Those are pretty strong. Engage and rely on healthcare and human services in providing clinical care. Deflection is an evolution from tough on crime to smart on crime. You're saying it's a matter of interpretation on what you mean by who's responsible? Because you had said that the officer would be responsible, but that's just a matter of interpretation based on whose interpretation?
I would say that the discretion of whether or not to perform an arrest would always be in the hands of the individual qualified to do that. In this situation, that would be the law enforcement partners. As far as if the law enforcement officer chooses to lean on the clinical experience in a co-responder model, or similar to Nye County, where it might be a social worker or a specialized CHW that responds, they would be seeking our assistance in helping the individual, not in making a determination on whether or not to arrest.
Who are you going to mandate that as a part of the program? Is this just, I'm fuzzy on how this works, is we're an agency and he's an agency and we have a sheriff that's an agency and then you have a nonprofit. What if what if law enforcement doesn't want these guys in their cars? What happens then?
Then they wouldn't be in the cars.
Okay, so why are we giving you money if they're not going to be in the cars, I guess?
Because this program is more than simply the co-responder model. This is also the Forensic Assessment Services triage team, that FASTT model, which is a jail-based reentry plan or planning case management. So it's two separate pieces in that title. The most is the Mobile Outreach Safety Team, and that would be done either in a co-responder model like it is in other places or in a post-law enforcement engagement as it's currently done here in Nye County.
We've been talking about basically the MOST program up to this point. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that's the clinician riding along with law enforcement, the social worker, whether or not they're the lead problem solver. Police Chief Magazine says they're the lead problem solver. You're saying that's open to whatever interpretation there is. It's pretty clear from reading it, but I trust you, I suppose. I have something here from the Nevada Legislature, Exhibit F, healthcare document. Again, in that pile of papers over there, it says the FAST, and now I'm switching gears to what FAST is. The FAST team committee's goal is to determine the best way to work with law enforcement to avert arrest. I guess you have the presumption that the best way to handle crime is not to arrest the criminals. Is that correct, or am I incorrect in my interpretation of your belief on the matter?
I would say that it gets a little tricky when we're talking about MOST, which is typically a...
We're talking about FAST right now.
Okay, so FAST is a deflection program that happens after arrest, where we meet them in the jail. We don't intervene or do anything on the legal charges of it. If there's a charge, if there's a sentence, that is fulfilled. What we do know is that on a national perspective, 95% of individuals in a jail will be released back into the community. And so we want to address their drivers of criminal justice involvement by planning for successful reentry starting while they're in the jail.
I'm not trying to impeach your credibility, I promise you that. It says right here, the FAST team's goal is to avert arrest. Maybe that's something that they put together as, it'd be ideal world. This is from the state legislature. So I don't know what that means. Again, there's a lot of differences in what I'm reading and from what you're saying. From my position, which is probably pretty clear at this point, you probably knew before you stood up here, is that we have a community that we need more police on our streets. We need more fire. I don't believe in having social experimentation to coddle people who come here to commit crimes, because what happens is if you coddle people who come here to get crimes, you get more criminals. And that's just the way it works. I grew up in Whitey Bulger's neighborhood, and that's part of the problem with what happened with me. If you leave your neighborhood, then they know you're from there. When they see your driver's license, you're treated differently. I mean, that's just the whole situation is such that when you create a social experimentation zone out of this town, and you send out that signal, it's okay to come here, and if you get arrested, then you're going to have a social worker to try to deflect and try to de-escalate, which is, I believe, part of the terminology that you use. It's not that it's a bad thing, but we're a community that has. Have you seen all of the spray painting going on, the graffiti lately? I mean, what would we do with that? I mean, would this program fit in with that? I mean, I don't know who's doing that, but all of a sudden, it seems like everything's spray painted and graffitied in town. I'm not trying to beat you up here. I'm really not. I'm just saying I'm very frustrated with the problem that we have here, that it's not anyone's fault in this room. But I just don't think that spending money on a social experimentation program that's part of some liberal ideology to coddle people who come here or who are here to commit crimes. I will say, again, as a person, I've mentioned this a few times today, I was treated like an awful criminal when I was a boy getting into trouble, which I should have been, and I was treated that earlier in my life, I probably would have avoided a lot of the problems that I had. And again, because of the neighborhood I grew up in, it's just how it was, and that's what I dealt with. So that's my perspective. I know this isn't the 1990s, and we're not in Somerville, Massachusetts, but that's what I dealt with. So from my perspective, if someone had thrown me in a jail cell instead of just everybody get out of here, my life would have been different. So I just am opposed naturally, personally, to that ideology. Not saying anything about your program, but I can't vote for this when we need money for law enforcement. We need money for all kinds of other things here to protect this community. I don't think this protects this community. I think this exposes this community to an influx of we don't know how many criminals who will come here for preferential treatment and all kinds of programs that aren't available in other places. Very quickly, does Las Vegas do this?
Don't quote me, but I do think that Henderson is putting a similar program together, but it might be a different outlying area in that greater Las Vegas area. But I believe that it was Henderson.
So Las Vegas doesn't do this?
They have different programs. What we've found across the state is that these programs are particularly effective in rural communities because of the limited resources and the need to help individuals navigate the available resources to set them up for success.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate your time. I'm sorry to keep you here late. If I had known you were waiting, I don't know if you were. I apologize. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Do you mind if I respond to a couple of the things that you were saying?
Sure, as long as you're okay with me responding to your response.
Absolutely. So yeah, I can certainly understand. Everybody's situation is a little bit different, and where you're coming from being different. What I can say is that I agree that law enforcement is an essential piece towards resolving this problem, and I would like to see law enforcement be able to focus on the population that can best benefit from that incarceration. What I do know is that law enforcement will often spend a great deal of time on certain high utilizers within our community. I know that law enforcement gets called out for a variety of types of calls and responses, whether it be for mental health or other behavioral health concerns, suicide ideation, wellness checks, those types of things. And that causes a drain on the systems that are there to protect us. What we find is that law enforcement that we do work with closely are referring individuals into our programs at a jail level and at a community level so that we can handle some of these issues that individuals are having in our community. Most law enforcement that I speak to gets into law enforcement to help the community, and we know that law enforcement doesn't say no when there's a problem. they try and resolve that problem. What we do know is that it takes a while for certain high utilizers in our community to provide some support. This program serves local community members. This program does not serve the population with heinous crimes. We are trying to help individuals with behavioral health needs address their needs that have been, a great deal of evidence has gone towards proving that it could be impactful on their success in the community. We know that money spent in these deflection and diversion programs often result in about a 7-to-1 return on investment ratio on what is put into it, as opposed to what the cost savings is for the community. So it's impactful for the population we serve, and it typically opens up resources so that law enforcement can do what they do best.
My problem with opioid, stimulant, substance abuse programs is that you're going to attract the things that you are there to serve. And so this community is not built for that kind of, and this is just my opinion, obviously, it's not everyone's opinion. I don't believe this community is built to be able to prop up an entire industry of opioid, stimulant, and substance abuse program service. I understand, when I went to law school about 30 years after their DA did, and I understand what you're saying. There's an ideology they teach in criminal law. Well, here's what we think, and if you care for that, you can go through this. And I'm perfectly familiar with the ideology that is, if you treat the criminals and you do this, and you put them in, you support them, and you try to help them. The problem is that we don't really know what causes behavior. I mean, we don't know if more people are going to come out here if they think, or if it's just a perception that's incorrect. And they say if you go out to Pahrump and you knock over a house, some guy will come out, social worker, he'll give you a banana and send you to the jail. He'll talk about your life for 25 minutes, and then you're off to a substance abuse program. That's my concern. We just don't have the ability to cater to this kind of community here. I just don't think we have that. So until we get a situation where we have enough police to stop all the graffiti going on, all the crime going on, all the bad things that happen in this community that I'm here to try to stop, I cannot possibly grow this have the risk. It's a risk, whether or not it's true, or you have data, or you have metrics, or you have a philosopher. Some kind of a teacher from some university, a professor who wrote something or thesis about this. I mean, that's fine, but it just concerns me because it is a risk, and you're asking us to take a risk on all of these conceptual ideas that it looks like they've only go back to, is it 2023? When did you start this COSUP thing? 2023? It's okay if you don't know.
I would have to confer. I believe that this is the third or fourth year on that funding, and then this funding, I believe, is 2020.
I have this. I wasn't going to use it. This is like being on the radio, by the way. This is exactly what it's like. I wasn't going to use this, but I do have a metric, and I had when the program was started, it started in 2016 and 2020 are the 2 points. And if you look, right here, the usage is spikes. Can you see that? This is from the metrics, from your own metrics here at and National Institute of Health. I mean, it spikes right after that. It's right there at 2020 when this happens. It takes off, it shoots off. So I'm not sure if this is part of the Biden administration. I have a feeling it has something to do with the Biden administration. As a Republican, I don't approve of what the Biden administration does. I don't like anything that the Biden administration's done. So this being a product of that, or a likely product of that, and then looking at this and thinking about the risk, that's just my position on it. But I really do appreciate. I can tell that you're passionate about it. And I can tell you believe it. I don't think you're here for any nefarious purpose. But we just disagree on this, and I just want to thank you for your time, and I do thank you for sticking around as long as you did.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
2020, another large pandemic occurred that greatly impacted.
We're all aware of what happened in 2020, sir. I appreciate that.
I'm just saying it corresponds well with the increase in substance usage.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Hebrews 13:8 said, Jesus Christ is the same now and forever. And I'm the same way on this as I was a month ago. The only thing that has changed in the last month, which I did want to bring up, is kind of interesting. And I just wanted to clarify this, because what people may not know has changed is there was communication with the sheriff and the Madam Director. Did you send an email on Tuesday at 11:45 a.m. to the sheriff? Do you recall that email? Would you like a copy of it? I have it right here.
I was going to say, I have sent out some emails.
Could someone get this to her so she could see the second page just for clarity? Is that possible? This is an email from you to the sheriff. And I just wanted to ask you a question about it. This is sent to the sheriff, and in it you said, Commissioner Bayne was not in favor of this program and brought up a lot of questions on whether this is supported by your office. Commissioner, I'm assuming that's me, stated he would have liked you to be present to hear your department thoughts. Did you write that?
Yes, I did.
I have a transcript of my comments here. Did I say that?
You asked that he be present in order to say whether he was.
Can you point out where I highlighted the 3 times the word sheriff is in this, if you want to see this. This is my transcript of do you want this?
Sure.
Could you give this to her, please?
I'm not doubting that I wrote what I wrote.
This is the transcript. I never said that, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I see, okay.
Do you remember me saying that?
My understanding, when you were here, is you stated you would like to have the sheriff to hear whether or not he was in favor of the program.
It's not in the record.
Okay,
So how was your understanding something? Because what happened before when we had Mr. Mills up here is he said that the program was about something else, and then I said, well, it says right here they want to have social workers in the cars. He goes, oh, that's not true. And now you're saying I said something that I didn't say, and now you're trying to tell us that you're not going to have social workers in the cars. So I don't know what to believe here. There's just a lot of conflict. I was also told that deflection was not a pre-arrest diversion. And here it is on the COSUP paper. It's a pre-arrest diversion. But I'll leave that in the past if you want. I just want to make it clear that I never said that I wanted the sheriff's opinion. That was just inserted into the discussion.
I just remember, I thought I heard you state that you would wish that he was on the phone or present in order just to say what.
This is highly technical stuff. So,
Mr.
Chair,
my
you know, for you not to know that highly technical stuff, that makes me concerned. Not yielding. Thank you, sir. So now I have a new problem with this, and I want to bring this up very quickly. The immediate goal is what we were told last month was to divert bad criminals out of jail into taxpayer care, treat crime like a disease, all these things we talked about. Mr. Mills said he wanted to have, ultimate goal was to have, and I have a podcast here, we can talk about that if you want, we can read into the record, whatever you want to do. But we were said that social workers, ultimate goal is to put social workers in these cars. Okay. But my feelings now, my new concern with reading more about deflection and pre-arrest diversion, have you ever come across people who commit crimes and discovered that they're illegal aliens during this process of deflection?
I would have to defer to DJ Mills.
Mr. Mills, could you possibly answer this question for us? Thank you, madam.
Would you mind repeating the question?
Sure. Do you ever come across people who commit crimes and then discover that they are illegal aliens?
So within the detention center, over the past several years that we've been involved, there used to be an ICE contract, and so those detainees would fall under that description. That is a disqualifying criteria in our service for under the program.
Let me re-ask the question. In pre-arrest diversion, which is right here on COSUP, which you said you were part of, pre-arrest diversion, we're still doing deflection, right? It's in the agenda. Is that what you're still doing?
Deflection and diversion are slightly different.
Okay, you're doing both or no?
Yes.
Okay, so let's forget the jails. Let's talk about pre-arrest diversion and deflection, which are similar in my mind. If you want to explain it, go right ahead. But they're both ways of not putting, I'll read it right here. The practice by which law enforcement officers connect individuals who otherwise would be eligible for charges to community-based treatment and services in lieu of arrest. And arrest, of course, is a Fourth Amendment seizure, right? So they're not seized, they're not processed. What we do when we arrest people, we find out if they're illegal aliens here in this county, and we report that to ICE. But under your pre-arrest diversion, if someone tells you that they're illegal while you're diverting them, what do you do?
They would not fall under eligibility criteria.
Would you report them to ICE?
Of the programs.
Sir, would you report them to ICE?
I would have to talk to my supervisor to see what the appropriate course of action would be in that scenario, as that has not yet occurred.
Okay. So I'm guessing you haven't. Have you ever asked anybody if they were an illegal alien?
We do ask where they were born, yes. So
you ask for immigration status, correct? Is that what
no,
you're saying?
we ask for where they were born as part of our checklist, reentry checklist. This is something that where we ask if they have a birth certificate, if they have a social security card, if they have a state identification. So we need to know what state they were born, where, sometimes what.
So under this program, an illegal alien could get caught selling drugs at the high school, and if you decide that he needs pre-arrest diversion, would he be asked if he was illegal, or would that just go unchecked?
That would never get to us because law enforcement would respond and they would determine the crime and the punishment associated or the charge to be associated with that. They wouldn't call us to help that individual because they would then be.
Okay. I mean, under deflection, it says it's a co-responder model. So I assume that, and in this document I have about your program, it says lead enforcement is actually not law enforcement. I have this here. We read it last time. I've got a whole packet here if you want. And you can disagree with it just like you disagreed that I didn't say something I didn't say. I mean, we can do that all day long and just disagree and keep disagreeing until you're saying what you think people want to hear. That's fine, but it doesn't make it a fact. I am concerned that this will lead to this county being a sanctuary county. We will have illegal aliens being diverted into programs for their care. We will not be reporting to ICE. Here's the risk. The risk is that I don't know. I don't even know what you think I'm saying right now because I could find out that it's being asserted I'm saying something else in an email in a week and a half or two. You understand my concern. So my concern is that I know that when law enforcement responds exclusively without assistance or whatever you want to call it, or guidance from social workers, that they have a duty to report to ICE. You're not reporting to ICE. You just said you have not reported to ICE. Now, whether you will or won't in the future, I suppose that's the risk we'll take, and that's the risk this board will take, and we'll face the consequences. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I yield back my time.
I'd like to make a motion to accept a funding agreement with Nye County Communities Coalition and for the FASTT program for calendar year 2025 in the amount as stated. Execute the Fund 210283, Health and Human Services.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to call for the vote.
Aye.
No.
Aye. Where's Nate?
Boscovich is aye. Is that 3-2? That motion carries 3-2. Last meeting, there was a vote on the FAST program, and I have two questions that I would like answered in an email from Corinne and or DJ regarding if we ask for somebody's immigration status and then if they are proven to be illegals, whether or not they're reported to ICE. And before I would ever support this, I would need to make sure that those answers are provided.